And I'm telling you, then all the years that I'd been doing these tests, I never saw more than a 2-year biological age switch in 8 weeks ever. And if we did, we were so happy we would do dances all over the spa, because we were these people had been in treatment all day long, every day, juice fasting and doing treatments, and we couldn't get a 2-year drop in the biological age. But just drinking the water and not doing any dietary changes, not doing anything else, this is what happened. And I was flabbergasted. There were antioxidants in that water that were causing this dramatic drop in the biological age of all of these test subjects.
My name is Hiromi Shinya. I have been practicing medicine almost 50 years. I'm thinking about to retire soon. I was a chief of surgical endoscopy unit in the New York City, clinical professor of the Albert Einstein College of Medicine. Approximately 50 years ago, I devised colonoscope, which is to examine entire your large intestine, and also I have been engaged in examining your upper esophagus, stomach, and duodenum. I have done approximately 350,000 patients examination, and I learned a lot of the your gastrointestinal tract, which is if you eat right food and also if you drink a good water, your GI tract will be very healthy. I have been doing the colonoscopic examination 50 to 70 patients every day, and I have removed the colonic polyps, almost 50 to 70 polyps every day. By now, approximately 350,000 patients come from all over the world. I have learned that when a person's gastrointestinal tract is clean and healthy, that the person's body is easily able to fight off disease of whatever type. A person with good, clean gastrointestinal characteristic is mentally and physically healthy, but a person with a bad characteristic is usually carrying some mental or physical problem. If you are interested in the theme, you can read my book titled Enzyme Factor. The only thing I can tell you now is I am convinced that Kangen Water helps you to maintain good intestinal characteristics. I think number one most important thing is water. To drink water, alkalized and ionized water, which is Kangen water. Antioxidant water, that's what we have to keep taking. Now, that's one antioxidant means that rejuvenate. That's a Kangen, doing a Kangen to rejuvenating our body. 70% of our body weight is water, so that the replenishing good non-oxidized water is the most important thing. So that what kind of water is good then? That's the one, the alkalinized water and ionized water. Our body pH should be the 7.42. That's have to be constant, have to be alkaline. Our body is alkaline. So if you suppose you're drinking oxidized water all the time, your body, in order to go up to 7.42, body have to do something. That's you take it out all calcium, magnesium, these minerals, to go up to or that the homeostasis constant level 7.42, so that you eventually become osteoporosis. Yeah? At the same time, you eat a lot of animal products, meat, the cheese, all kind of things. That's the more become your body become acid. Yeah? So acid become acid as you lose more the bone mass. So water is one of secret. So 70% we drink proper water, healthy water. That's we can live human lives. So that if we replenishing sufficient water to saturating our cells, each individual cells, 60 trillion cells. Right? Even though we do two-thirds of these cells, you see, to supplying the good water and the oxygen, nutrients, we're not going to become so aging so fast. The most important thing I can tell you to live a long and healthy life is you are what you eat, drink, and what you think. I hope my health method and the Kangen Water will guide you to your happiness and healthy lifestyle.
I've had the great fortune in my life to have graduated from one of the finest medical schools in the world, Harvard. I was trained in the Harvard residency program. I've spent my entire professional career affiliated with that institution. One of the best things, next to being affiliated with this great institution, has been my discovery of Kangen Water.
We have absolute positive proof that in living human tissue, living human cells, Kangen water, pH 9.5, is a strong antioxidant. And that is incontrovertible. It's like, it is or it isn't, but this one is.
Listen, this is real. This is not phony. These studies were done and they're scientifically solid. And they were done in an NIH and federal government approved laboratory with a stellar reputation. Now, by that I mean laboratories that are licensed not just by the country, by the state, but approved by the NIH, approved by the CDC. And these laboratories are basically what science relies upon to do testing on living things. When this water is ingested into a living human person, our metabolism is positively affected in energy production by this water. And think about that. You drink water which has 0 calories, right? But you crank up your energy, which has calories. Amazing. Well, it means that, you need to drink it out of the machine. But when you do, it has those effects that impart energy, not just to the water itself, but to you as a person ultimately when you ingest it, because it does in fact get into your cells. And we have proven that unequivocally. And for too long, it's been put into sort of a category of unproven science or fake science, whatever. And my position is, and my goal is, and my so far results are that in fact this is a very special water, and that it has profound effects on living human and living tissue in general, and that we ought to exploit and produce, because nothing is easier than drinking a glass of water. And when that glass of water doesn't just quench your thirst, but also has a wonderful physiologic effect on the body, you really have something, and you should continue to explore that you get these results known to the public. The mitochondria, also known as the engine of the cell, these are the little things that produce energy in our cell. It converts glucose and other things into ATP, which is energy. And what we found a substantial upregulation of the activity of the engine. Figure it, your normal engine runs at 500 RPM. Well, with this water, it cranks up to 1500 RPM. So it produces more energy by making these mitochondria work harder.
That water kind of speeds up, it's like a governor. It increases the rate of production of the ATP, which is probably in your case what you noticed, that you seem to, do your athletic stuff a little bit more easily or a little bit with more vigor. That's the reason you had a higher development or a higher production of ATP. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and I think that's a very exciting point, because I know in the kind of like in the performance side, or as they quote unquote today, the biohackers, the people that are experimenting with improved performance, brain function, and kind of dealing with the world today, they're all talking about the mitochondria and energy production. It's now becoming quite common in parlance amongst people who are studying human performance and improving energy.
You can say unequivocally is that this water has an anti-inflammatory effect. If you look at 90% of the diseases that we are suffering from in our society, inflammation is the bottom line. It is the causative factor for 90% of all the illnesses that we suffer as living human beings. And so to be able to say that the water that you drink has an anti-inflammatory effect is profound, because side by side, that water coming out of your tap doesn't do that. White blood cell count, that went down. And these white cells showed indeed that this water is a potent, measurable, direct anti-inflammatory agent.
And that's huge, because we say, anecdotally, that this stuff is good for itis, for arthritis, and sinusitis, and all kinds of different things that are based on inflammation. So if you have something that suppresses inflammation, you can do a lot of people a lot of good. Think of the model of the arterial plaque, where there's an injury from free radicals to the plaque. And then the inflammatory response to that injury, trying to heal the injury, actually results in deposition of cholesterol and all kinds of things, in a progressive event, unless it's unchecked, that can give you occlusion of large blood vessels, medium blood vessels, and blood vessels critical, like to your brain and to your heart, and so on. So that's just one example of the inflammatory response being responsible for virtually the majority of diseases of our civilization. And so if you have something that subdues that response, and most importantly, it's totally non-toxic and there's no side effects from it at all, then you'd have something, and we in fact have shown that to be true. Imagine that you can drink water and actually ameliorate a lot of your conditions. And I think this has got great promise. And most importantly, it kind of takes the naysayers who think it's all nonsense and puts them in their place.
The bottom line is as follows. There was a marked increase in anti-inflammatory cytokines. What that means, inflammation was decreased. Anti-inflammation was substantially reduced, again, when compared to the regular water. In addition, we also found that cytokines that ordinarily produce inflammation, their number was reduced. So anti is up, and inflammatory is down, and that's profound. But then the greatest surprise was the human body makes the most powerful antioxidant known to man. It's called superoxide dismutase. This is an enzyme produced in the liver that is extremely powerful in taking reactive oxygen species or free radicals and containing them, particularly things like in the lining of our arteries and our intestines. This is where, for example, they counter atherosclerosis, they counter rheumatoid arthritis, they counter these, and this is a very powerful enzyme. And we found that this enzyme is 2.5 to 3 times increased over baseline enzymes in relationship to regular water. And that is huge. That is so huge that I think it's really important that we go on and follow this up with appropriate studies. We ought to be able to study patients very easily who have arthritis. I mean, arthritis is so common, particularly in the Western Hemisphere. I mean, rheumatoid arthritis and degenerative arthritis is exceedingly common. And we could study that and we could show, and I'm convinced that we would be able to show that these folks that really take the Kangen water drinking seriously will benefit from the point of view of having less joint pain, less inflammation, less downtime, and a better sense of well-being.
What if the most powerful antioxidant known to science, the very enzyme your body depends on to neutralize the deadliest free radicals, could be tripled in your liver just by changing the water you drink? That enzyme is superoxide dismutase, nature's frontline defense against oxidative stress. It doesn't just scavenge free radicals, it disarms the most destructive one of all, the superoxide radical, a volatile molecule that accelerates aging, damages DNA, and ignites inflammation at the cellular level. Now imagine this: your liver, the metabolic command center of your body, suddenly producing 3 times more of this life-protecting enzyme, simply because you replaced ordinary water with Kangen water. That's not hydration. That's biochemical warfare against aging and disease. It means cellular resilience skyrockets, liver detox becomes supercharged, inflammation is disarmed at its source, the clock on aging ticks slower. This is not just water. This is a signal to your body to activate its highest form of defense. Your cells fight harder, your body heals faster, you stay younger, longer. This is not just water. This is Kangen.
There are also a number of things that have been suggested in the literature in relationship to electrolyzed reduced water or ionized water. One of them is longevity. There's all kinds of literature out there about the Hunza people who live forever. That has been around the literature for centuries. And it's because they drink glacial water, and glacial water actually is ionized because of the piezoelectric currents that are produced by glaciers. The point is we can measure whether or not something affects aging by studying 2 things. One is the telomeres. Imagine showing that a group of people who drink Kangen water for a year can show telomere lengthening. Those things, and they're easily to study. I mean, they're expensive. On the other hand, here are the results. That the group was its own control. The Kangen water group had a marked increase in their red blood cell count with stress and exercise. Translated, greater oxygen carrying capacity, 12 to 14% higher red cell count. That's highly significant. That's what runners do when they train. They go to high altitudes so that they can increase their red cell production and then have a greater tolerance for oxygen deprivation. with exercise. In addition, the Kangen group had a dramatic reduction in the inflammatory response, as, for example, achy joints, muscle aches, and so on. And that was also measurable. And then we had a psychological profile, and that's a standard American Psychiatric Association thing that is used to assess how people feel under stress, certain things. And it's considered a valid measure. And when they drank the Kangen water, they got over the joke much quicker. They didn't feel, stressed or achy or as long as prior, and just had a greater recovery time and overall reported a more positive experience. They had less inflammation. Consequently, they reported less pain. Consequently, they reported less fatigue. Consequently, they reported quicker recovery from all of this stressful situation. Put this whole mystery of electrolyzed reduced water, ionized water, into a scientific, unassailable basis. So mind you, whatever we do, these are not medical claims, they're facts. They have been tested in a NIH-approved laboratory, in a laboratory with an impeccable reputation. And ultimately, when we get enough data, we expect to be published in peer-reviewed publications. The blood test doesn't lie, and enzyme activity doesn't lie. And a laboratory with the quality controls that they have doesn't lie, because they are approved by the government regulating agencies.
Talk about that microclustering.
Well, look, microclustering, there is no question that it exists. The University of South London has a huge water department, and they have studied water, for years, for many, many years, 50 years. And they show that water is a living product. I mean, molecular activity, molecules bouncing into each other, congregating, aggregating, clustering. When that water is electrolyzed, when that water assumes an electric charge, there is a reduction in the accumulation of molecules as clusters. And the commonest clusters are in the 5 to 6 molecule range. It's proven by taking this water and subjecting it to nuclear magnetic resonance. And that is measured in hertz. Normal tap water has 126 to 150 hertz resonance, whereas Kangen water has in the 50 hertz resonance. What that indicates is that the clusters of molecules are smaller. That means it's absorbed better.
Kangen water in your wound healing clinic in Bullhead City, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
My experience with 2.5 pH water is over 12 years.
As you know, pH 2.5 is a strong oxidant, right? Because it's a positive pH. And it has an ORP, at least in my machine, of about 1300. And what it does, it produces a hypochlorite ion. And that water kills every germ known to man, including viruses. And I have hardcore evidence for that. We've had that tested in separate laboratories. And the beauty of it is the hypochlorite ion kills all germs, but because the water decays over time, because as it loses its electric charge, there is no tissue damage. If you use a fully buffered hypochlorite like Dakin solution, you can use it for a week or so, but after that it actually damages the tissue because it is so powerful and so strong. We have very good results in my clinic.
And you deal with some pretty horrific conditions of open wounds. I've saw some of the pictures, and of course we know we have antibiotic resistant strains of bacteria which are a problem. Is it effective against those in your?
It is effective even against the Delhi strain and the Prague strain of MRSA, it is effective against. We have not seen any antibiotic resistance to that water.
That's an incredible thing. That's a real incredible. Just on its own, outside of the drinking water, just to have that function is incredible.
I take 2 blood pressure pills now. I used to take 18. I take 2 blood pressure pills now daily with my morning 16-ounce glass, 9.5 water. I want to state at the beginning, I'm an allopathic physician. What that means that my entire life has been dedicated to practicing evidence-based medicine. My background is in surgery in particular. I graduated from Harvard Medical School in 1965 and trained in the Harvard service, the Boston City Hospital, as a general and vascular surgeon. I became the assistant director of the Department of Surgery at Cambridge Hospital in Cambridge, Massachusetts in 1972, and then became eventually the chief of surgery and program director and spent my entire career in surgery at the Cambridge Hospital. I was interrupted for military service in the Republic of Vietnam in 66 through 68, and basically spent my time there as a battalion surgeon in combat for 14 months. I was activated for active duty again during the first Gulf War. In 2015, when we actually used the water out of the machine and tested it, and we compared it to local tap water in the community where the tests were run, there's no question about it. Kangen water differentiates itself in tissue culture as being a more potent antioxidant than tap water.
It was a completely bulletproof study. One, it was approved by a review committee consisting of people from the community, from the scientific community. College is different, that adjudicated the study for its relevance and validity. So to get a study like this done, you've got to go through a lot of hoops. And then study was presented to the NIH, the National Institute of Health, and it was put in the trials.gov section. And it's listed there with the government. And they go through this study. They don't just let you put, any kind of study on that. There has to be a rigorous scientific program with it and a rigorous scientific scrutiny. And we passed all of this and continue to do so.
And as a unexpected effect, because the laboratory found a new testing modality for mitochondrial activity, we found that the mitochondria, which you can look at as the engine of the cell, that's where energy or sugar and other nutrients are converted to ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is what drives all of our cellular activity from your heart to your lungs, to your brain, to your muscles, to your nerve transmission, to everything. That is upregulated, which means that if you have a substrate like glucose in your system, Kangen water makes that engine run better. Cranks up the RPM, puts out more power, revs up the torque, sort of. That's basically what it does.
Now, when you say it gets into our cells, I know that we drink the water, and as we drink it, it enters into the aquaporins to hydrate the body.
Yeah.
When people drink Kangen water, the question comes up a lot about alkalized water and stomach acid.
You drink Kangen water, it hits your stomach, and because it is different and is microclustered, it starts being absorbed in the stomach. Tap water goes all the way through the duodenum before it gets absorbed. So you have that advantage. Absorption starts in the stomach. And these naysayers who say that, well, your stomach acid will mix with the water and neutralize it,
They didn't attend the course in physiology of the stomach when they went to medical school. They weren't there for the lecture, or they forgot about it, because the resting stomach has a pH of 4. The resting stomach has no significant acid in it at all, because the acid that's produced by the parietal cells of the stomach is around pH 1.2 to 1.5. That is so acidic, you can dissolve a dime in that water. That's hydrochloric acid. Now, this acid, if it were to float around loose into the stomach, it would digest the stomach. You'd have a perforated ulcer. So here's what happens. In the resting stomach, the pH is around 3.5, 4, and water does not trigger acid. Water does not evoke an acid response. Alcohol does. You drink a shot of vodka, your stomach acid goes up immediately. The stomach is stimulated to pour out acid. Same thing, you eat a steak. The stomach is stimulated to pour out acid to start breaking that down, so that down when it enters your small intestine, it can be digested. Now, what happens is when you drink an ordinary glass of water or Kangen water, there is no outpouring of acid. Alkaline ionized water is absorbed in the antrum of the stomach. By the time your water that you ingest on an empty stomach gets to the small intestine, it's all absorbed. It's profoundly more rapidly absorbed. And that's important because that's how it gets into your cell. If it were neutralized by acid, it would never get to your cell, but it does. So your water goes in, absorbed in your stomach. That's why you get the pH factor into your blood. You have to get that water into your bloodstream to come into your cell. And so we know that it does that because it produces the superoxide dismutase. It produces all of these factors differently from ordinary water.
Kangen water's alkalinity comes from its abundance of electrons, delivered through OH- ions. These electrons are not just present, they're the very agents behind its proven systemic effects. Antioxidant activity, anti-inflammatory cytokines, and increased superoxide dismutase production, among others. For these effects to occur, the electrons must survive digestion. And because the electrons are what make the water alkaline, OH-, the alkalinity itself must also survive. If stomach acid had neutralized it completely, the electrons and the benefits would never reach the body. But the science is clear, the benefits are real, because the charge survives.
Alkaline water, I define that as a stable alkaline water. In the United States, virtually all tap water is alkaline because we have metal pipes and they don't do well with acid water. And certainly when it comes out of the ground, for example, in the Northeast, Washington State, Oregon, and what have you, the water is extremely alkaline, some places as much as pH 10.3. Very high alkaline. But that water is not ionized, it's stable. It's stable. And therefore, it does not have that energy that alkaline ionized water does. The ions are what gets and imparts the energy to the cell that then produces better cytokines or different cytokines, reduces inflammation and so on. It is that aspect, and I call it a living water because it has a birth in the machine where its ORP is high, where its pH is perfect on the nose, and then it decays. Now, the decay is over time. So when you drink it fresh, you get a fresh energy. And the beauty of our machine, and I'm not going to name anybody else or get into, is that we have an ORP that is powerful throughout the cycle when the machine is used. One of the machines we studied would have an ORP of, say, 500, okay, when you started it. But 5 minutes later, while the machine is running, it'd be 100. You take a Kangen machine, an hour later, it's still 500. That's the point. And that's why we are, without any doubt, number one. Number one. They don't have, first of all, they don't have the plates. They don't have the technology. And none of these, and I've personally tested myself a number of them, they can't crank out the same ORP. And the ORP is key. You need that energy to give you that right pH. You need that energy to give you enough of those ions to circle around. But no question, superior to anything I've studied.
Has everybody heard of acid rain? This is what it actually means. Rainwater used to be 8.9. Now, rainwater collected today, 6.2. We're talking about almost 1,000 times more acidic than it used to be. We got acid snow, too. Okay? Why does that happen? In industrialized worlds, with all these chemicals that we have and pumping into the air, it mixes, it binds with the H2O, and can no longer be separated. The estrogen, the plastics, the gasoline, the bleach, that binds to the hydrogen of the H2O, and no matter how you filter it, even distilling it, even evaporating up into a cloud and being rained down, there's still estrogen in your rain. When you run water through an electric field, it not only breaks that H2O apart, and the drug bound to the hydrogen gets broken away, but also those drugs get broken apart. So this company got an award from one of the top environmental organizations in the world because the wastewater coming out of this can be digested by Earth again. So we're putting clean water back into the environment, the first clean water. Does everybody know how water works? We drink it, we use the bathroom flushes to the treatment plant, they poison it, filter out the paper and the dead frogs, they throw it back out in nature. And then they expect nature to digest it. Then we get water from an aquifer and then we filter it again, treat it with chemicals, send it back to us. What's happened is we've introduced thousands, 75,000 chemicals that our grandparents didn't have to live with. Okay? We've saturated nature. And these chemicals have bound to the water and can't be separated. The only way to separate them is through an electric field. And it has to be a strong electric field. That's why only this company makes a machine that can do it. Oh, there's a lot of knockoffs out there claiming they're doing the same thing, but guess what? No body changes. No health changes. Oh, wait, let me take that back. Worse health, because when you use cheap parts, you get heavy metals, you get toxins into your body. I'll explain more of that later. The human body is 7.4. We are alkaline. Acid kills us. Got it? The last stage of death, regardless of what you die of, most of the time is the blood going acidic. But if your blood goes out of this teeny tiny little range, you're toast. Got it? So 7.4 is exactly perfect. Your body is constantly working and eating yourself to keep it there. Got it? It's happening all the time. Right now, you're all eating some of your muscles and your bones and the enamel off your teeth, and you're eating away at that nice alkaline brain. Pouring this water stops it. I'm going to explain how. If you're at 7.4, all 87 hormones are firing as they should. All of your body systems working as they should. If you go slightly off that, and the further you go off that range, the sicker your cells are. The more your body starts to not function right. There's me, 37 years of doing everything I knew as I learned, eating healthy, organic, juicing, doing colonics, taking lots of high-grade supplements. This is right after a triathlon. And this poor guy was still dealing with chronic respiratory and allergy stuff. Had a lot of mental and hormonal issues, trouble with learning disability and attention deficit and stress and anxiety and worry and bad sleep. Anybody have any of that? Look at the muscle tissue here on a triathlete, not very good. The bloating here is because of all my life of digestive problems. My insides didn't work. My knees were bad. I tore my first ligaments when I was a little kid, and I had a ruptured disc 15 years before this, so I had pain every morning when I got up, and it was a routine to get my back going. So this is 4 years ago or actually now 5 years ago when I was younger and healthier, right? This is a couple of months ago. This is after I discovered power to change. Yeah, you want to see? This is actually the month I got the machine, and you can see I was still 32 waist and kind of pushing over the edge. Muscle tone still bad, allergies and sinus stuff and respiratory stuff constant. So I had to take lots of natural things, and I had to be on a real special diet to keep it from constantly bothering me. I could manage it, and it was a lot better than managing it with drugs, which I did my whole young life, but it was a lot of work. I was a high-maintenance guy. Knees still hurt, back still hurt, hormone issues, digestive problems. Now, the reason I show this picture is because that's right up to 41 years. That's everything I knew, and I was helping people, teaching people how to reverse disease in their body for a good 17 years by then. I could get people to come to my clinic that had been let go by medicine. They had done everything, all the treatments, and they were sent home to die, and I could help those people back to health. So this was the month I got the machine, and this next picture is 4 months later. Pow! That's me. That's real. Sinuses, gone. No more allergies. Ever since that point, now I started drinking the water, my nose ran like a faucet. Phlegm came out of my throat. My tongue was coated. My ears had extra earwax. My hair itched. My skin itched. I was going to the bathroom 20 times a day. Most of you would be scared and say, that water's scary. I'm running away. When you understand how your body works, you're going to love that. And if any of you are drinking the water and trying it and you're not experiencing that, you're not drinking enough. You want to drink it until stuff happens. Now, I purposely stopped exercising because I saw the results immediately in what it was doing to my body. And remember that catabolism, that cannibalism? You can push it the other way. You can make your body go eat the bad stuff. How would you like to turn your body and say, hey, go eat this lump of fat here. Get it out of me. Get this toxin out of my brain so my brain works right. That's what you can do. So this is a person in 4 months that wiped out 41 years of allergies, have not had an allergy since. I go out in the pollen and mow the lawn. I used to have to wear a mask. I get dust blown in my face. One big sneeze, gone. No more. The joints, my knees are smooth like silk. My back, I wake up, there's no pain. How did that go away? I thought it was scar tissue. Thought it was permanent. That's what everybody told me. But my body didn't know. Body went and ate whatever was wrong in there, rehydrated the tissues. The muscles swelled up with no exercise. The muscles were always there. All of you got muscles under there somewhere. I was working out for 41 years. I had lots of muscles. I just couldn't see them because of the winter coat over the top of them.
And working on a doctorate in nutrition. I have a bachelor's and a master's degree in nutrition and completed my PhD coursework prior to starting medical school. So my background really began in nutrition When I entered medical school, I was sort of trained like most allopathic physicians that our job is to diagnose disease and to treat it with medication and surgery when necessary. And so I followed that model for the first few years of practice. I began to turn back towards my nutritional training and trying to help them understand nutrition as a means of helping them improve their health and reverse some of the chronic diseases that I was seeing on a regular basis. I tell my patients that we are one big biochemical reaction. Everything that's happening in our body is a biochemical reaction. And for biochemical reactions to occur, we need a solvent. And the solvent in our bodies is water. So there's no question that the most important thing that we can do is hydrate our bodies. When we treat chronic disease with medication and we don't really attack the root cause, which is oxidative stress, free radical damage, we're not really treating or curing the disease, we're managing the disease. The benefit for me as a physician to use water to treat bacterial infections is phenomenal. Number one, water's cheap. Secondly, it's very effective. We've seen through studies, and I've seen through my own observations with patients, that it's very effective. And thirdly, there's no side effects to it. For those of you who are trying to optimize your health and trying to do everything you can to have good health, to maintain your health, preserve your health, my plea is just try the water. There's nothing more simple, there's nothing more inexpensive, and there's nothing more powerful and effective than Kangen Water.
Change your water, change your life. Do yourself and your family a favor. Ask for a free sample of Kangen Water. Try it and see for yourself.
You are made of more water than anything else. Water is therefore the single most important nutrient in your entire life. Your body is 70% water. Choose that 70% wisely. The single greatest impact on your health comes from that 70%. To change your health, start with the 70% that defines it. For centuries, rare spring waters like Lourdes, Nordenau, and Tlacote have been revered for their healing properties, rich in hydrogen, minerals, and negative ORP. Now, technology brings these same life-giving properties to your tap. Kangen Water is not just inspired by nature, it is nature, scientifically replicated and perfected for everyday use. It is unnatural to be drinking any other water. You won't find reverse osmosis, distilled or artificially filtered water at the bottom of a natural stream. But in every authentic healing spring, you'll consistently find water that carries the unmistakable signature of electrolyzed reduced water, rich in active hydrogen, minerals, alkalinity, and life-giving potential. These healthy healing springs often contain naturally occurring molecular hydrogen, alkaline minerals, and super tiny water for superior absorption, thanks to geothermal activity and Earth's redox reactions. Both healing springs and Kangen Water share powerful traits: molecular hydrogen, antioxidant power, alkaline pH, and super absorption power. The Kangen Water Ionizer is nature-inspired technology. It gives you nature's best, on tap every single time. Why travel miles to find a healing spring when you can bring the spring home? Kangen Water brings the miracle of nature into your home, from the sacred springs of Lourdes to your kitchen tap. It is nature's blueprint delivered to you by human brilliance, right in the comfort of your home. Can your water do all this?
I'm Dr. Barry Aw. I'm very happy to be sharing this information with you today. What you're going to see on this video is the accumulation of knowledge that has taken me over 23 years to put together. I was born a sickly kid. I had every system failure. My nervous system, digestive system, my endocrine and skin, my respiratory system. And over the course of my life, I went through every kind of treatment, both medical and natural, herbal, homeopathic, everything. And what I learned over those years was how the human body repairs itself. So I've boiled it down to a very simple formula, and we're going to explain that in this video. I have a very simple goal. I just want to change the world. The way the world is right now, we're in the sickest, most depressed time of our life, and it has to do with the health of our human body. If we spread this message, we can change our country and bring our health up to the top. And we can therefore change our economy, and we can change the world. All it takes is you watching this, learning it, doing it, and then sharing this tape.
Our speaker has over 9,000 patients. He's been a biological medicine specialist for all these years. He has many other types of credentials, to including being a chiropractor, acupuncturist, and many other designations as well. I give you Dr. Barry Awe. Would you join me in welcoming him?
So we got to know, why are you falling apart and how to stop it? This machine is the critical answer. What this will supply is a surplus of energy in a hydrated alkaline environment. This is the most important thing you need to stop falling apart and repair your body. Nutrition plays its part, but you'll see that nutrition has a nice, small, easy little part. This is critical. The energy of this water we can measure with a meter. It's called an ORP meter, oxidation reduction potential meter, but it measures millivolts of energy. The average number we get is between 700 and 800 millivolts of energy. The best food you can find, if you get sprouts, especially if you grow them yourself, eat them or juice them immediately and measure them, that's about 200 millivolts. 800 or 200. How many sprouts can you eat? At only 1/4 the power. How much water can you drink? So this is plugged into the wall. Electricity being imparted into that water, breaking it apart. When you break apart molecules, you produce energy. You want to just pour this right into your mouth. Go, like that. That's the best thing. But second best, pour it in a glass and chug it. Don't carry it around with you. Don't sip it. This is chugging water. This is the way I used to help people. And this is $25 worth of organic greens. And that makes about a half gallon of juice. And you need a gallon a day, so you need $50 worth of organic greens to repair your body. You can get a gallon of this for like 1/10 of a penny. Anybody that says this is expensive does not understand life. They don't understand what your body needs. This is the cheapest miracle you'll ever buy. If you leave here and don't get one, your brain's not working right. You need more of this in your brain, because this is it. This is what it looks like, and that's that cloud, and that's the highest potential of energy. If we put that meter in right away when it's poured, very high level, almost 800 millivolts.
Hi, my name is Dr. Peggy Parker. I'm a biological medicine doc and a naturopath. And a few years ago, I made a discovery that promises to be a medical game changer. I discovered that ionized water has some unique antioxidant properties that are absolutely foundational for regaining or maintaining health. And in order to prove that theory into scientific certainty, I need to do a clinical trial study. And doing this study has been an absolutely overwhelming passion of mine for the last few years. And now all the pieces are in play, and it's time for me to begin. The first time I heard about ionized water was actually during my biological medicine training. And I tried this water ionizer that was recommended, and I didn't really like it. Then I got really sick. Actually, my gallbladder became gangrenous before doctors figured out what was wrong with me. And so when they tried to remove it, they left a lot of gangrene in my body, and so I was really literally rotting from the inside out. I was really sick, couldn't seem to get much better. I tried everything that my naturopathic and biological medicine taught me that had worked to help my patients, but it wasn't really doing much for me. And a friend of mine told me about ionized water. And because I had a negative experience with it in the past, I just ignored her. And she kept talking to me about it, and I kept being sick. So one day I found out that there was a man coming from Japan to do a lecture. So I decided to go to the lecture, and during this 3-hour lecture, it took a long time because we had to do translation. During the 3-hour lecture, I drank 4 16-ounce glasses of this ionized water, and every symptom that I had disappeared, and it stayed gone for 2 full days. So I knew there was something important. I just couldn't figure out what it was. So I went home and I started thinking about it. And then I was like, oh, I think I might understand what's happening. So I went and bought an ionizer, arranged for 10 of my patients or friends who were all 60 years old or more to be part of an informal study. And they agreed to drink a certain amount of water every day and come back in after 1 week and 2 weeks and after a month to be tested. And so what I was doing is testing their blood, their urine, and their saliva, and hooking them up to some machines and kind of looking at things. Their test results were tremendously better. So it wasn't based on symptoms. What I was looking at was how minerals were being introduced into their cells, how the pH, how the cells would change pH, and how the rates of oxidation were changing. And I'm testing their blood, urine, and saliva. So here's Bob, and Bob had been a patient of mine for some time, and he was a pretty good patient. He would do whatever I asked him to do, but he was at this plateau and didn't seem to be getting any better. So I want you to notice the most important thing on this is that Bob's physical age at the time was 71, but his biological age was 103. So the relative age of his cells in his body were much older than he was chronologically. So physically, he was 103. And so he was one of the people that I had do this test. And so I'm now going to show you what happened after he'd been drinking this water for only 1 week. His physical age was still 71, but look at his biological age. It went from 103 to 97. And I'm telling you, then all the years that I'd been doing these tests, I never saw more than a 2-year biological age switch in 8 weeks ever. And if we did, we were so happy we would do dances all over the spa, because these people had been in treatment all day long, every day, juice fasting and doing treatments, and we couldn't get a 2-year drop in the biological age, but just drinking the water and not doing any dietary changes, not doing anything else, this is what happened. And I was flabbergasted. I was simply flabbergasted. And I thought about it, and I thought about it, and then one day, months later, the light bulb went off in my brain, and I figured out why that happened. You have to remember that this was back in 2005, before anybody really knew anything about ionized water. We all concentrated so much on the pH that we didn't really understand the magic, the true magic of the water. And it was in that time that I realized this connection. I realized that oxidation was leading to dehydration, and dehydration was leading to inflammation. This explained everything. What I knew was that all of these diseases, from my biological medicine study, I knew that all of these diseases had something in common. They all had oxidation or inflammation or dehydration at their core. And I kept testing people and that biological age, which is connected to oxidation, kept getting younger and younger. And so finally I decided that the ionized water had to be creating some kind of antioxidant action. So I went back and I'm studying all these tests, and then it came to me. There were antioxidants in that water that were causing this dramatic drop in the biological age of all of these test subjects. But it became absolutely irrefutable in my mind. There was some kind of antioxidant magic happening in that water. And oxidation happens when free radicals bombard your cells. And you have about 100 trillion cells in your body, and every day each one of those cells are assaulted with 10,000 by 10,000 free radicals. That damage is called oxidation. Free radicals are really just atoms or molecules that have lost an electron. And that happens from exposure to radiation or UV lights, or so things like fluorescent light bulbs and computers and cell phones and cars and manufacturing plants and fertilizers and pesticides, and even the water that we drink and the air that we breathe that are kind of polluted, those actually contain free radicals. All of those 100 trillion cells have a few things in common, and one of them is that they're made, they all have a membrane, and that membrane's made of something called a phospholipid bilayer. That's just a fancy term for fat. And fat is one of the things that's the most easily oxidized substances in your body. And we can see examples of that in your own kitchen. If you've ever fried anything and then later you try to clean that vent fan in your kitchen and that fat is thick and sticky, that's oxidized fat. Because our cell membranes are made primarily out of fat, as these free radicals enter our bodies, they start stealing electrons from the fat, causing a huge problem. That fat then changes its character. Instead of being a semi-permeable membrane that allows oxygen and water to flow freely in and lets carbon dioxide and a few other waste products out, instead of doing that, it starts to repel water, so the cell becomes dehydrated. It starts to repel oxygen, so now the cell doesn't have enough oxygen to produce energy. And inside the cell, carbon dioxide is trapped and other waste products are trapped, so it effectively makes a very unhealthy cell. Well, those unhealthy cells will divide and multiply in your body just like all cells will. So healthy cells, unhealthy cells, they all do the same thing. They divide and make two new daughter cells that are identical to the parent cell. When that happens, we start to see tissues change. We start to see organs change. We start to see glandular systems change. And so wherever your genetic weakness is in your body, whether it's your eyes or your heart or your blood vessels or your skin or your pancreas, wherever the weak link is, that's where we're going to see a disease process or an illness begin to form. And unless you've been living under a rock for the last few years, then you know about antioxidants. You know that vitamins A, C, and E are antioxidants, and you know that all the brightly colored fruits and vegetables, even chocolate and coffee, contain antioxidants. In theory, the more antioxidants you consume, the more reversal of oxidation in your body, or the more it will stop that free radical damage. But there's a little known fact about these antioxidants that we take in supplement form or in our foods, and that is that as they do the very thing they're designed to do, which is quench a free radical, it becomes a free radical itself. So it donated an electron to a really bad free radical, and in turn it becomes a weak free radical. So you can see that it could slow down this process of aging and disease and death, but it could never really make a big enough impact to stop it. There's an interesting thing about ionized water. As I tested all of my patients, I began to see dramatic changes in the rates of oxidation on their cells. Couldn't figure out why, and then one day it was like a light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, this is about oxidation. What's happening is that as this oxidation disappears on their cells, everything else changes. I'd been focusing on the wrong thing the whole time. My colleagues have been focusing on the wrong thing the whole time. I had a friend who said, you know what, this is just like hydrogen fuel cell technology. What happens in a hydrogen fuel cell is that water's passed through an electrical field, splits the water up, so H2O becomes OH negative and H. So we have hydrogen. And in the presence of platinum, which exists in all hydrogen fuel cells, those hydrogen easily, freely give up their electrons. So now what do we have? We have a bunch of free electrons. In hydrogen fuel cell technology, those free electrons are put down a little wire and we get electricity. In ionized water, what happens is that those free electrons are recycled into the water. So that as we drink that water, we're actually taking in a bunch of free electrons. Now, those free electrons will go and mitigate or quench those free radicals, and they don't leave anything in their wake. There's no weak free radical left over. This can actually stop the cycle of oxidation, because I believe that together we can pioneer a change in the health of people all around the world, one glass of water at a time.